Listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome to our CEDAS Academy for April. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to make a couple of housekeeping notes and then we'll turn it over to the speaker. Thank you again for joining us today. I'm Courtney Hendrickson, Economic Development Director for the Town of Farmington and the Chair of the CEDAS Program Committee this year. This program today is the 6th one in our series and the 3rd one for 2013. And CEDAS Academy is a webinar series where we invite CEDAS and prospective CEDAS members as our audience and local experts as our speakers. And this webinar series is held at 12:15 in the tradition of a lunch and learn so that attendees can sit at their desk and spend half an hour to 45 minutes learning about a relevant topic from a local expert. The GoToMeeting software program is great because attendees can access the program anywhere that you can get a computer and or phone access. And I always like to thank CERC, who provides the GoToMeeting technology for us, as well as their facility and their marketing support. Remember that each CEDAS member that attends 3 or more Academy sessions annually will receive recognition at our CEDAS annual meeting in December. To find out what you've missed out on in our first 5 Academy sessions or hear them again, you can find a recording of these webinars at our YouTube channel. You can search for CEDAS Academy, and you can also access this directly through the CEDAS website. Today's program will also be recorded and uploaded to YouTube for anyone who misses it or would like to see it again. Don't forget, the program committee is committed to bringing you something each month in 2013, whether it be a webinar or a live get-together. The upcoming dates, the May Academy session will be on May 22nd, and that webinar topic is to be announced. And then the date for June is June 19th, which is a live meeting at the Travelers Championship, and we partner with Metro Hartford Alliance on that. Much more information to come on both of these programs. I want to thank you all for your support of these programs, and thank you for being here today. Let's now turn to today's topic. We will be hearing from Rohit Sharma. He will be discussing the GRID New Haven project and the statewide innovation ecosystem that's currently under development. Rohit is a director with the Economic Development Corporation of New Haven. He serves as day-to-day lead on the GRID, the EDC-sponsored New Haven Innovation Hub, managing the outreach and intake efforts for the hub. In this role, Rohit advises early-stage companies on growth and development strategies. Before joining EDC New Haven, Rohit worked in private equity and investment research. He began his career with Morgan Stanley as a mergers and acquisitions banker and is a graduate of the Wharton School at UPenn. The GRID New Haven project hopes to encourage the growth of startups and other companies with high growth potential, also known as Stage 2 companies, by connecting them with space, talent, capital, education, and a supportive entrepreneurial community. We will hear why this plan has positive economic impacts, and we will also hear about the challenges that this plan will have to overcome in order to succeed. This information is critical to all of us economic development professionals and elected officials who want to help our businesses thrive and grow in this economy. Rohit will share what elected officials and professional economic developers should know about the new program and answer questions from attendees. If you have questions for our presenter, please type them in on the chat section of your control panel, and we will address them either as we go throughout the program or at the end of the program. Thanks again, and I now will turn it over to Rohit.
Hey, thanks, Courtney. I'm going to talk both about the GRID and kind of the larger innovation ecosystem. So if you just, as we kick off our kind of standard presentation, we have a pretty ambitious goal to make New Haven and Middlesex counties the #1 place for entrepreneurs to start and grow companies. Ambitious, but we figure better to aim high, right? So the GRID is part of the innovation ecosystem, if you want to go to the next slide. And this was part of, this was created out of legislation back in 2011, part of the jobs bill, The total funding, it's intended to be a 5-year program, $25 million over 5 years, so obviously about $5 million per year. And as a economic development tool, it's really about job creation, and specifically job creation from entrepreneurs, startups, and Courtney mentioned earlier, stage 2 companies, which per the state's definition is companies with 10 to 99 employees. So just to maybe fit this into the larger framework of what the is going on at the state, I think Governor Malloy and his team, they've sort of have this 3-pronged strategy. The first 5, what originally began as the first 5, and is now I think the first 15, but that's meant to target the large ESPNs and Alexion, kind of the very big Fortune 500 type companies. The Express Loan Program has a broader mandate, but it's certainly supposed to touch Main Street and lifestyle companies, so really kind of a broad swath of companies. But the ecosystem is targeted towards, again, kind of creating companies here in Connecticut or supporting kind of higher growth potential companies in Connecticut. And the way that the state has done that is through seeding these hubs around the state. So you can kind of see we've established 4 hubs, Stamford, Hartford, the Eastern Connecticut hub, which is actually in Stores, and here in New Haven, we're covering New Haven County and Middlesex County. So there is a kind of an overlay at the state level where kind of a partnership of CTC and CERC are involved with the ecosystem, but most of the action and most of the program design occurred at the individual hubs. So what we did in New Haven, the EDC kind of took the lead in creating the slate of programs here in New Haven. We brought together a collection of people and organizations that have been active in the entrepreneurial community for some time here, and we pitched a set of programs that we feel make sense for New Haven and for Greater New Haven, that is. So that's some context on the ecosystem, and just in terms of where companies. So CT Next is kind of the moniker, the brand that the state is using, and the website for intake. Anybody who's interested in signing up for the innovation ecosystem does go to ctnext.com. And the way the companies are routed, it's really just done geographically based on your zip code, your business address zip code. You end up being funneled to the appropriate hub. That said, because each of the hubs is a little bit different in terms of the programs that they offer, if a company has a preference or wants to join a specific hub, even if you're not actually in that geographic catchment area, companies are free to do that. And secondly, if we have a company in New Haven that can benefit from a program that's being offered, for example, in Stores, that's no problem at all. The system is set up to allow that. So we can go to the next slide. So here in New Haven, the grid, the way we really thought about it is what are the things that entrepreneurs need, entrepreneurs and potentially high growth companies, what are the resources, what are the assets that can most directly help them kind of accelerate their growth and create what we like to call a runway to to be able to again accelerate their growth plans and be able ultimately to create jobs and generate wealth for the state of Connecticut. So it was thinking about that in that sort of that runway metaphor that we established our programs. And if you if you can move the slide, whoever's doing that. If you look at on, I guess, the fourth slide, we've laid out what those programs are. And so what we're trying to touch, there's really 5 areas that our programs are designed to address. So the first is space. What we've done is we have this co-working space here in New Haven called the Grove. Established several years ago. It's it's a space where entrepreneurs, freelancers, solopreneurs, if you will, can come and it's on a membership model where you can buy a certain number of hours per month, and you, instead of working out of your home office or having to sign a commercial lease, which usually is tough to do for periods of less than a year or 2 years. This is a flexible way that you can kind of get out amongst other like-minded people and work in an environment where you have people and resources around you as you kind of work on your individual freelance business or on the entrepreneurial startup that you're working on. So what we've done is the ecosystem funding has actually allowed us to dramatically expand the space that's available to the Grove, especially to have more team-oriented space, so more private offices for smaller companies, but again, available on flexible terms. So, we're actually just opening that new space in a matter of weeks right here in downtown New Haven. On the space side, there's one other program called the Bioscience Clubhouse that we're exploring, which is kind of taking that co-working model and applying it to lab space or sort of science-related space. So that's, again, it's being able for entrepreneurs. It's key to be able to access space, but on flexible and affordable terms, which is not always so readily available. After space, the other category, another category that we're targeting is talent development. So we've got a couple of programs directly addressing the talent needs for startup companies and high-growth companies really across the state. And the first is we have an apprenticeship program for software developers. One of the challenges really anywhere, but certainly in Connecticut, is where we've hear again and again that we don't have enough software development talent, and especially don't have enough that stays in the state. A lot of, we created the number of graduates from, the universities here, not enough of them stay in the state, number one, and number two, an awful lot of them do end up at some of those Fortune 500 companies, at the ESPNs, up in the insurance industry in Hartford, which is fine, but we do want to create an avenue for some of these graduates to maybe try the entrepreneurial or the startup or high growth company route. And what the apprenticeship program allows us to do is kind of take recent graduates and provide a training overlay that allows them to become kind of productive employees, productive developers in a faster time frame, than without it. And secondly, we provide placement with these startup companies and high growth companies. So our first cohort is actually, obviously we're coming up on graduation time, so our first cohort is being formed and should get placed starting in May. So I'll actually come back to this program a little bit later when we talk about ways that perhaps some of the people on the call here can be helpful with, or that we can provide resources to you. On the talent development side, one other program very quickly I'll mention is we have a digital media studio that's part of the hub It's actually, the name is Catalyst Media. It's run by a couple of professors at Quinnipiac University for us. And this is a program that does two things. Number one, it helps keep digital media talent here in the state, a lot of which ends up going to New York and other places out of state. But we want to keep those kinds of people here in the state. And secondly, it's a great resource for companies, both hub companies, and this program is available to work with a larger group of companies across the state of Connecticut. And what they do is create digital content, create videos, they work on social media tools for companies. These days, it's if you have a product or service, you have to be able to demo it. You need a video, PR videos, investor pitch videos, available to put on YouTube, those sorts of things. So this is really a great resource to have in-house for our companies. The next category is that we're trying to address is education and mentoring. Mentoring, we have a pretty sizable network of mentors across the state now with functional and industry expertise available to mentor companies on a one-on-one basis. So that's something that's of great value to companies, and it's also we've beyond just the mentoring piece, we've got a couple of educational programs that we've launched. We have a Bootstrappers Boot Camp, which is basically talks to entrepreneurs about how to build a company without raising institutional or venture capital, but basically how to bootstrap your way to a sustainable business model and company, and how to build your company without outside capital. We're also forming a CEO bootcamp, which is basically the idea here is to take the lessons from larger companies, take management lessons from larger companies, and think about how to apply those to some of the stage 2 companies, companies that are, have proven business models, but maybe aren't of a scale that they can take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. So the CEO Bootcamp is really just a management tool that can hopefully allow companies to think about opportunities for growth through lessons from bigger companies. The fourth category is capital connections, and there's two things worth noting here. First, we are partners with the Angel Investor Forum. CVG is an informal partner of ours, and the idea is these groups are going to start spending time, here at our hubs, and be able to meet with companies, and over time build relationships, and hopefully, invest in some of these companies and support their growth. The second piece on the capital connection side, though, is a program that the state has established, what are called the innovation vouchers, and this is a pretty nice tool. It's $10,000 worth, or up to $10,000 worth of a grant that companies can apply for, and it's meant to support kind of research and development. It's meant to support prototype creation, both on physical kind of products or on software. It can be used for software prototype development. It can also be used to protect IP, legal work around protecting IP. If you go to ctnext.com, there's a pretty detailed guidebook about the voucher program. But this is a nice. Each of the hubs has a certain number of vouchers available to grant, and we've found a lot of interest so far in the program. So, so that's a great tool. And lastly, really the last thing that we're trying to do, really with all of our programs, is just create community. There's we've done some of that, within the city of New Haven over the last couple of years, but obviously now that we're covering all of New Haven and Middlesex counties, we have a lot more work to do just to make sure that the like-minded, entrepreneurial, high-growth companies are aware of each other and, can sort of learn from one another, can pursue business opportunities together that, in partnership when that makes sense. So, kind of building and supporting that community is something that we're trying to do across all of our programs. I don't know if it's just on my screen, but Courtney, I don't know if the slide hasn't changed. I don't know if we can. All right, there we go. So, so if we could actually go to kind of the next slide. Once again, those are the categories that I just ran through, but these are kind of the specific examples of how those categories, programs within those categories can address specific needs that entrepreneurs and high-growth companies have. So the next slide talks about the team here and kind of how we're structured. So at the hub management level, Derek Koch is a local, he runs a software development company here out of New Haven. And one of the things that the state thought was important, and we certainly thought was important here in New Haven, was to have real entrepreneurs involved in the management of the hub. And that's why we brought in Derek. He's been very active in this kind of in the entrepreneurial community. He had brought Startup Weekend to New Haven for the first time, I think, back in 2011. So we felt it was important to have an entrepreneur in that role. And as hub manager, he really oversees the programs, makes sure that the programs are meeting their objectives, and is also very involved in working with the companies. I'm serving as what we're calling the growth company advisor, but again, what I do is kind of direct the intake function, meet with companies, screen companies, and try to make the program connections, as well as following up over time and tracking performance, seeing if the companies are making progress through our support. And the EDC New Haven team here, more broadly, is involved at the hub management level. We have a steering committee, which is kind of helps us oversee and advises us on our operations. We've got kind of a mixed group. We've got an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur in Miles Lassiter from Hire One. We've got two investors in Rob Edigal and Konstantin Drakonakis, both venture capital investors. And we've actually just recently, just this week, we formally had two additional members join us. It's Jim Boyle, who's with the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute, runs it, and Susan Froschauer, who is the new president at Cure. And we feel that these are sort of the groups that, in some sense, that the grid is really meant to, it's sort of, those are the kind of the key constituents that the grid is meant to interface with. So, we feel we have a great group of advisors who are available both to, think about whether and evaluate the performance of the programs, but also have specific suggestions on ways to help companies, because they've built companies, they've funded companies in the past. So it's really great that we have that group in place. And again, some of the programs that I ran through before, we have a broad group, people like the Grove, Derek, again, his company is called Independent Software. The digital media studio that I mentioned before is run by a handful, by two professors out of Quinnipiac University. Startup Weekend is now part of, at least in New Haven, the Startup Weekend New Haven is part of the grid's activities. So really a consortium model that we've employed here in New Haven. Here's the next slide, give you some idea of our kind of ongoing activities. These are some of the things that we have coming up. For example, there's a Valerie Gelb, who is a former executive with MasterCard, a senior executive on the marketing side with MasterCard. This is somebody that CT Next brought in actually at the state level to do kind of very high-level mentoring. So she's coming out and doing kind of a half day of office hours with companies across the state, in fact. The Bootstrappers Boot Camp that I mentioned earlier, they have a session, it's like later this week. One of our, again, one of our target areas in New Haven is bioscience, and we've got our next meetup for people interested in the bioscience space. And again, you don't have to be starting, while it's great if you're an entrepreneur and starting a bioscience company, we definitely want to meet you, but you don't have to be just an entrepreneur. If anybody's interested in the bioscience space more broadly, you can come out. The new Grove space that I mentioned earlier is opening at some point in May, and there's a couple of other events here. But this just gives you a taste of the next couple of weeks, some of the things going on at the grid. So that's sort of that's kind of the formal part of our presentation here. But again, let me just talk a little bit about sort of the intake process and the kinds of companies that we're trying to reach out and find. So, again, the ecosystem is designed to support high-growth, scalable companies. So, it might be easiest to describe the companies that we really aren't able to work with, and it's largely kind of these lifestyle companies. So, restaurants or your retail, a florist shop, that sort of thing. Those kinds of companies. And by the way, we do have referral. We have places to refer everyone. So if anyone comes in, regardless of what kind of business it is, we do have a place to send them. So that's not a concern. But the kinds of companies that, again, that we're really looking for are companies that have scalable businesses. It doesn't have to be a technology business. It doesn't have to be a biotechnology business. But it's as long as it's not a lifestyle type business, we feel that we can support them in some way through some of our programs. In terms of the intake that we've had, just to give you an idea, since we launched, we really launched in early November of last year. We've had in New Haven, we've had about 110 companies register, and it's about 375 around the state. The majority of the companies that we've had come in so far are definitely on the earlier side, the earlier stage end of things. So it's really accessing the stage 2 companies that has been a little bit of a challenge. And again, these are companies that have 10 or more employees, have revenues, and obviously because they have revenues and are sustainable and are kind of focused on managing their businesses, they're probably a little bit slower to kind of raise their hand to ask for help. And it's reaching those kinds of companies that we at the grid can definitely use some help with. So, if any of your constituents, any of the businesses that you deal with fall of any size, if you feel can benefit from some of our programs or just being part of our community, we would really appreciate the help. Our contact information is on here. Please visit our website, gridnewhaven.com. And again, the state, if you're not in the, if anybody's on the call who's not in New Haven or Middlesex counties, ctnext.com is kind of the state site for the ecosystem. So, you know, please do invite your companies and entrepreneurs to visit the site. So, so that's really kind of the formal part of the presentation. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Rohit, the question here is, how is the Grove funded?
Well, the Grove is it's sort of part of the GRID team, and the Grove is well, okay. I think my guess is this is sort of the question. So, I mean, the Grove is it's a standalone. It is a business. So, you know, if you want to join the Grove, you know, there's a membership fee that the companies or the entrepreneurs do have to pay to join the Grove. The state funding has been used for two things. Number one, the Grove has added some educational programming, something they're calling Grove Academy. So that it's supporting this educational programming, and it's also supporting the additional space that we're moving into. So, you know, the state grant is supporting those two specific pieces. But if the question was sort of getting at, you know, how is the Grove supported? You know, there are membership fees, or if you're a company, they do have some private offices as well. So if you're a company looking for private office space, you know, there is rent, you know, for that space. So hopefully that answers that question.
Rohit, the next question is, how large is the Grove in terms of square footage?
The new space is 8,800 square feet. And by the way, just I should have mentioned this earlier. You don't have to actually take space at the Grove. You don't have to move to New Haven or anything like that to take advantage of any of the other programs that the GRID is offering. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Thank you, Rohit. That's all the questions we have listed here. If anyone else has a question, please type it in immediately. Here's the next question. Rohit, was the steering committee part of the original team?
Yes, actually it was. At least the three people who were listed in the presentation, they were involved really going back. I think Miles was probably involved when the state was still crafting the sort of the RFQ for the whole ecosystem, kind of the original plan at the state level. So, so yeah, definitely. I mean, Rob, Miles, and Constantine were part of the working group here, going back, well before we actually established the ecosystem late last year.
Thanks, Rohit. That's all the questions we have. Oh, Liz Stocker keeps writing in with questions. Okay, next question. Where is the Stamford Hub?
The Stamford Hub is in downtown Stamford. It's actually the old City Hall building. It's now called Stamford Innovation Center.
Okay, very good. Rohit, that's all the questions that we have. I want to thank you very much, and I want to apologize to everyone for just the mix-up with the slides. I just wasn't totally clear on when to switch the slides, so that's a lesson learned for next time. I want to thank Rohit so much for the time, and we'd be happy to do any follow-up. Rohit, if you're interested in getting any more additional information out to this group, that might be helpful as the program evolves. And I want to thank everyone else who was on the call today. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much.